The Long Game acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is produced. We would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders listening to this podcast. We would also like to acknowledge that mindfulness is an important and ongoing part of life.
Breathe in, breathe out. When the stakes are high and all eyes are on you, how do you perform to your potential? More than ever, the practice of mindfulness has become a pathway to harnessing potential to drive performance of athletes around the world.
Through the lens of some of Australia's most inspiring athletes and sport professionals, we take a deep dive into the different techniques, tools and life lessons they've learnt along the way.
I'm Ben Robbins, Head of Mental Health and Wellbeing at the St Kilda Football Club.
And I'm Jarryd Roughead. And this is The Long Game, brought to you by AIA Australia. Ben, how are you?
Terrific, Jarry. Terrific to be here with you in this new and exciting venture.
Why are we doing The Long Game?
Okay.
Straight into it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'll be honest, I've never done a podcast before. Mm-hmm. We're both sort of in the same boat here. So
I've been a guest of podcasts.
Yes, true. Yeah, I've been a guest too, but never sort of running the show.
Yes.
So there's a fair bit of we're stepping into this unknown, which, creates anxiety. And so I've got no idea how it's going to go. But what I do know is we're going to be speaking to a lot of really interesting people who have some great stories. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know those people. I'm really looking forward to unpacking what makes them tick, because there's some really extraordinary guests we're going to have on the show.
Can you give us an insight into anyone?
No.
Why not?
Well, because I don't want to spoil things.
Yeah, but we've got to get people. They can't just think that they're going to listen to you and me.
No, they're not. No, they're not going to do that.
So
well, they are today.
For us to get them on the hook, though, we might need to mention a few names.
Okay, so we're going to speak to a world champion boxer. Do I say their names? Or are we building the suspense
World champion? Olympic medalist.
Yeah, Olympic medalist. Yeah. We're going to speak to world champions in surfing.
Oh, yes.
Athletics.
Yes.
Footy. Well, it's not. We're gonna spend a bit of time with footy, aren't we?
So it's not just your typical St Kilda podcast where we get St Kilda people back.
No, I don't think we're going to speak to any Saints people. Oh, we might, maybe. Who knows? We'll see what the sort of people want. Try and give it to them. But look, it's I'm really excited about what's ahead.
You seem like you're jumping out of your skin.
No, I am. No, I am. No, because you can learn a lot from, obviously, people who have, like we are doing now, we're stepping into the unknown a little bit. And if you're at the top of your game in any field, any domain, that's what it's about. It's about stepping in the unknown, having a crack and seeing what happens. And
we are recording today, Ben, from the newly opened DFC, which is the Danny Frawley Centre here at Moorabbin, which is something you're very much a part of, but has been great so far for the Saints. Only been open a couple of months, but so far so good.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable facility. I mean, we were lucky enough. We started here at the Saints, at the same time, end of 2019, and this was just a hole in the ground. It wasn't even a hole in the ground. And then we've watched it being built over the last 2 seasons where we're out there training, and what it's turned into is a pretty extraordinary place that we hope will turn into something that the community gets real benefit from, real value from. Certainly what's happening downstairs in terms of what's available for your physical health, but then up here where we are now, what we hope will turn into this world-class facility for promoting positive mental health as well. So there's some lofty, real lofty goals here, but there's some great people involved. We've got a great start with what's around us here, and looking forward to seeing where it takes us. Yeah. What your thoughts?
No, if I was a player, I'd be pumped if this was your rehab centre.
Yeah.
To see the pool and see just down the hallway here, a room with the Normatec leg pumps, the chairs from Temper that the boys get to sit in daily, and focus on their recovery, along with what's soon going to be the ice bars and saunas and whatnot downstairs, if that was around when we were playing Ben, we may, still be running around.
Don't forget our core meditation trainers.
Those as well.
That form part of this holistic approach to recovery and performance. And just another thing I'm really looking forward to, Jarry, with our podcast here is, we're going to speak to these really high performers. Like we're doing a lot of work here at the Saints to prepare our players mentally for the rigours of playing in the AFL. Like it is a brutal sport, physically certainly, but just as much mentally. So talking to these high performers about what does their mental preparation look like? What did they do throughout, their careers? How did they overcome obstacles and setbacks and adversity? These are some of the things that I would really like to explore with our guests. I know what we're doing here, but it's just gonna be fascinating to see what else we could be doing or how else we can see these performers.
So I guess we've mentioned, we've just given a teaser into some of the different guests we're going to have.
Massive teaser.
Because we are new at this, we thought give a little bit of practice to each other by finding out a little bit more about each other, or just letting the people know a little bit of who we are. Obviously, we are powered by AIA Australia, which are huge for the footy club and the DFC.
Great supporter of us, yeah.
So thank you very much to them. But obviously, Ben, get to know each other a little bit more for the guests.
I would love to get to know you, Jarry, a bit more.
You've known me for 3 years.
Yeah, I know. But I think there's lots of things that we can talk about that I don't know.
Okay, go.
Because
go.
I'm going now. I'm going to go.
Just for those listening to, Ben is a qualified psychologist. So he's trying to get inside my head right now.
It's not true. I never do this. You always think I do. I don't. We've all... If you're listening to this podcast, probably you know something about Jarryd Roughead. Okay, so you've known that he's a 4-time premiership-winning player with the Hawthorn team, the incredibly successful Hawthorn team of, sort of between 10 to 5 years ago. Okay, you've now moved into a role here at the Saints. So I would like to hear about that.
Okay.
But way more importantly than that, you've been able to, or you've experienced a unbelievably challenging situation with your health, cancer. Okay, which again, probably if you're listening to this podcast, people are possibly aware of that. I'm certainly interested in that and the impact it had on you and your life. I'm also interested in what you're doing now with the Saints and how the transition's been out of footy into the role you're performing. So where do you want to start, mate? What do you want to talk about first?
I'll just go.
Tell me about, all right, so tell me about, we need to talk about these things.
Yes.
The premierships with the Hawks. Let's hear about, not so much the premierships, because I reckon you've probably done that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your last season at the Hawks. What was that like for you? And then your decision to finish playing.
I guess for mine, I was 31 at the time at the end of 2018 when I was still captain and Clarko had come to me and asked, would you like to be traded and finish your career at another place? Because of what had happened previously with Hodge and Mitch and Lewis, these guys that had gone to other clubs. It was kind of a business viewpoint from Clarko where it was you can go elsewhere and try and help a team, but also it helps maybe Hawthorn at the time. Whereas after what I'd been through in 16, I really didn't want to go anywhere else. I'd grown up there for my whole life from 17 and I thought at the time I didn't really need to go anywhere else and try and make new friends and start over again. So I tried to back myself in, and in hindsight, it didn't work out the way I wanted to. I played the first 6 or 7 games and then found myself in the VFL and understood it was probably going to be my last year. So finished off, played about 10 games in the VFL, was lucky enough to get a farewell game against the Gold Coast. And then, at the start of that year, Lethers, who's the incoming CEO at St Kilda, got in front of me in February and said, if you do finish up this year, we'd like to be at the front of the queue if you would like to come to St Kilda. So it was a bit of a change in my life. 19, we'd had Pippa the year before, so she was only 1 at the time, 18 months old when I finished. So a fairly big change for me, but in a sense, they always say you die twice, once as an athlete and once as for good.
For real.
Yeah. So that was my last year.
So transition, mate. You've gone from full-time premiership player to playing the VFL.
Yep.
Humbling. What was that like for you, that experience?
It was good. I bought into Box Hill. I was lucky enough to be coached by Max Bailey, who I'd played in a flag with in 13, and had with all the guys down at Box Hill, whether they be young kids from Hawthorn or the Box Hill listed players. I bought in, really enjoyed my time there. We didn't get as many wins. They were coming off, I think, a premiership in 16, maybe. So I had a ball that reminded you of what it was like when you first started in your AFL journey. I played a few games, in a couple of years at Box Hill. So I really enjoyed my time there. And you probably think, why does it happen to me? Why do you get dropped and have to go back and play? But at the end of the day, you're still playing footy, so it wasn't a be-all and end-all.
And Pippa was born...
February 18.
Yeah, okay. So that's in your last year?
We had
last year?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to...
19 was my last year, but 18 she was born. So,
yes.
I'm dealing with being a father for the first time. And
yep.
I'm heavily routine-based, mate. So when it came to preparation and stuff like this, I was pretty anal with my preparation. I'd drive... As soon as captain's run had finished, I'd have the same routine basically up until I left to go to the game. So, you throw in a baby and that completely throws it out of whack. So you understand that if something does change, it doesn't impact the way that you play.
Yeah. You mentioned 2016, pretty challenging time in your life.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about the diagnosis, the impact, what happened, and how'd you go about handling it?
Yeah, I've spoken about it numerous times. Obviously, I had a spot on my lip in 15 that I thought was just a blister. Found out it was melanoma, so had that removed, which ended up being a quarter of my bottom lip was cut out. Got back to play within a couple of weeks and thought nothing of it because that was midway through 15, so we were on the way to winning, obviously, another flag. At the end of 15, had all the routine scans and whatnot, and was pretty much, given the green light that I was good to go and didn't have to worry too much. And then got married in May 2016. I'd just come off a PCL reconstruction, so my knee, it was just going through rehab and whatnot, and then had a follow-up scan in May, and it was shown that I had 4 tumours on my lungs that were the size of my fingernails. So, when you'd go through these scans, they popped up. So I was about a week or 2 away from playing when I found this out. So that all got thrown a complete 180, and then it was around the time where clinical trials were just going on, and my oncologist at the time recommended that we try a clinical trial that was showing good signs, and I went on this drug for 6 to 9 months, and then at the end of 2016 I was given the all clear.
Mindset when you received that diagnosis, how did you feel?
No good. No, I broke down. I asked a few questions because initially when he mentioned you could be out for 18 months or 2 years, because of what's happened in footy and footy injuries, it's just like, I'll treat it like a footy injury. So I thought, all right, 18 months takes me to end of 30. Maybe I've only got a couple of years left after that. So I was, as I said, I was recently married, so I tried to protect Sarah as best I could and didn't really let her in too much when it came to, I had to tell her face to face. I couldn't tell her over the phone. But then from then on, I was pretty protective and used the footy club as my safe place.
What did that look like? Safe place? Was that because you could talk to people there? You felt comfortable there?
I felt comfortable because you didn't have the eyes of everyone else on the outside just looking at you, saying, or thinking that there's that footy player with cancer. So something that, because at the time I was 29 and Hawthorn were up and going, so you're a pretty notable figure in the public. But then, yeah, like the boys would treat you normal. The footy club was a place where I could go to feel normal. So that it wasn't great at the time because you're going through a lot of different challenges, and then all your release points that I'd had since I was 17 years old is taken away from you, whether that be being able to go out with friends, being able to play sport and training, and having a couple of beers here and there on the weekend. All of those were taken away for 2-3 months, which made life pretty difficult, as well as going through a renovation at home. So we were quite busy into 2016.
Yeah. How long was it until you received like a more positive diagnosis?
So from May through to, I'd had follow-up scans because of the trial not being well known. You had to be pretty open with side effects and whatnot. So I had 4 different side effects towards the end of my treatment, where I had to be open and honest with nurses and doctors because they were the ones that had seen all this, or hadn't seen it, so they knew what to deal with if it was going a bit south. So I was having follow-up scans every couple of months and making sure it all was okay. And then at the end of 2016, I got the good news that right to go. And
what's it mean for your life now, mate? Like, how often do you get sort of go through screenings or?
No, so I get skin checks every 6 months, and I don't have as of I think it was February this year, I was 5 years in the clear. So that means I don't have to have any follow-up scans anymore. I mean, peace of mind, I could probably have them just to clear the mind, but I'm okay with knowing that if there's any changes in my life, or if there's any new medical findings, whether that be from my oncologist or nurse, they'll let me know to come in and get checked.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
On this topic.
Yeah.
What perspective has it given you, mate? Like, has it changed the way you see the world?
Yep.
Yeah.
All I knew was footy and sport from growing up. So you leave South Gippsland at 17 years old, you leave school and all you go into is footy, and you're pretty selfish as a player. So then to go through what I went through, understand that footy's not everything, as well as now having a family, footy's, one of the things the oncologist said is, I expect you to live to be a granddad. So if I live to 90 or 100, footy's going to be 15% of my life in terms of playing. So when you put it like that, it's like, okay, that you think it's everything.
Yeah.
But then when you have kids and, you get told that, I expect you to live to be a granddad, it's like, well, this means a lot more than 2 hours of footy on the weekend.
Yeah. And so you've moved out of playing, out of the Hawks where you'd been for, 15 years?
Yep.
To the Saints. You touched on it earlier. Simon Lefleen, the incoming CEO, recruited you.
Mm-hmm.
What role are you doing now here at the Saints? What's your or roles?
Title?
Yeah, give us your job title. That's a good place to start.
Football operations assistant.
Okay, great. What the hell does that mean?
Sometimes I don't know. Well, I think after what's happened the previous 2 years with COVID, it kind of threw a spanner in the works with everything. But initially I came in to help with leadership, help with the forward line, help with just general craft with some of the key forwards, help out bench coach on the weekend. And then my passion is going to be towards the list management and recruiting side of things. So working with James Gallagher and the recruiting team to bring in talent, Ben.
Yeah. We love bringing in talent if possible.
Making us better.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is...
So your passion really is in the list management recruiting space. That's where you would like to go eventually.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
If Lethers is listening.
Yeah. And he will be.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you. I know you've spoken about cancer and your diagnosis and the impact on you before.
Yeah.
And I know clearly it's a life-shaping, changing event. I can't imagine what it would be like. I have nothing but admiration and love for you and what you've been through, and the person you are. So thanks for sharing that bit of insight with me and everyone listening.
No, thank you, Ben.
All right.
Now, if we flip the script,
can we? Let's talk about me for a bit. Jesus.
Yeah. So originally, I know a little bit without reading that. So drafted from Mafra,
correct,
to the West Coast Eagles. Not many would know this. Yeah. And after 1 year there,
I would say so.
Traded to Brisbane.
Correct.
Spent 5 years.
Six seasons in Brizzy.
Yeah. 1 with the Bears and then 5 with the Lions.
Correct. Yeah.
around their period where it was their premiership era of, 2001, 2 and 3.
Yep.
At the end of 3, traded back to Melbourne, to North Melbourne.
Yep.
Where you spent another 3 years.
3 seasons at the Kangas. Yeah,
yes.
Correct. Yeah.
And then finished up.
Terrific research. Your research here is impeccable.
94 games.
Well, I've spoke to soon. 92 games, so pretty close.
Yeah, but your emergency for those other 2 that
correct.
I have noted.
No, that's
so,
true. That's true.
When you finished and the transition out, what did you want to do?
No, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Never put 1 minute of thought into it. So, which is the exact opposite advice we give to our players here. No, I had no idea really. I put in a lot of energy into, your footy career. I had to. I was, average player, just trying to just work hard and and I gave very little thought to what the transition looked like. When I left North, it was the end of 2004 was my last season, and my wife Melissa was pregnant with Ella, our first child, daughter, and Ella's due in May, and so I'm coming out of a footy career at 29, I think, and had no real sort of qualifications or skills, anything meaningful anyway. So I was like, geez, really need to get going here. Family to support. Anyway, through the AFLPA, I found, they offer different programs. I found myself working at a logistics company, and then ended up, that logistics company was acquired by Toll, and so I ended up working at Toll Transport, and found my way into the HR sort of space, leadership, this sort of stuff, organisational development, and working with a couple of psychologists, and just sort of got me thinking around this career. I actually did psychology out of high school, but like you said, I went over to West Coast as I was 16 when I left, and I wasn't ready for uni, even though I had a course to go to. I was interested in psychology clearly, and so I sort of found my way back to it through those connections at Toll, and I also thought, wow, there's actually a great opportunity here in sport. I never once used a psychologist as a footballer. They had very limited impact on us as in any of my teams. So I just feel like there's something missing here. I feel like this is a space that could be explored a bit more. But I also knew it was going to be a bloody long haul. I studied for nearly 10 years while I was working to do me, my undergrad and honours and PhD and all those things. And so, it was a big undertaking, but sort of had a bit of direction where I wanted to go, and found myself here at the Saints.
Previously, you were part of North Melbourne as the psychologist.
No, I wasn't the psych at North. So I was working in leadership development under Brad Scott.
Yes.
So I was doing some part-time stuff with the Kangas while I was studying.
Okay.
For 4 or 5 years at the Kangas.
And then, similar to myself, as you mentioned before, we both found our way here at the end of 19. How did that process happen for you?
Well, I knew Simon Lethlean through different footy connections, and so when I finished my study, the Saints were looking for a psychologist. They hadn't had one for a couple of years, and we just decided to have a chat. I'd come in here and meet some of the staff in here. Got a really good feel immediately for the people. I think I met Rats and met some of the other assistants and yourself and others, and it just felt like there was a bit of an appetite for change and work in this space. Like the Saints had some challenge, some guys with really significant mental health challenges, and wanted to invest in this space, and so they did, and I came on board at the end of 2019. Yeah.
And how does your role look day to day, and even on the weekends when we play?
Yeah, so my role is I'm the head of mental health and wellbeing. So the focus really is on the players and staff's mental health. I've got a background in clinical psychology, not sports psych, so that's where it starts. Supporting our players to be mentally healthy, and then the secondary component is definitely our performance. So I have a fair bit of time with the players weekly. We have a weekly session, just talking about different stuff comes out of the game or different psychological concepts or things we want to talk about to help our performance, to support our mental health. Work closely with yourself and the coaches on things like attention control and emotion regulation during games. I sit on the bench during games to perform different functions, making sure we've only got 18 on the field, holding up signs, sort of a real dog's body down there. And then, talking to different players at different times, trying to just help them if I can. It's a really interesting role. I mean, when I started, it was pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. So, I really didn't know what I was getting myself in for when we started, as much as, it applies to probably lots of people who were listening and throughout the world. It's sort of COVID has changed things. But in my role in particular, there's been a lot of challenges with players and staff at times, and really interesting role. And as we try to get better as a footy club, this is a big part of it, the psychology of the individual players and us as a team.
Well, you and I both agree that it's changed significantly in footy, from your generation, even through my career. It's completely changed. And we always thought you run to get fitter on the weekend, you do weights in the gym to get stronger, but there was never any chat about how we can train our minds to get better as well, was there?
No, zero. It was sort of, it's referred to in code a little bit. It's, words like attitude and mindset and, these sort of terms, like they're meaningful and they're great terms, and I use them too, but it's like, what do they actually mean? How can we bring a great mindset? How can we bring a great attitude? What's that look like? How can we stay focused on our tasks? All of our players on the weekend, they've all got jobs and they're different. Like Dougal Howard's job is very different from Jack Steele's, who's very different from Tim Membry. Like they're playing the same game, but just what they have to do in game and what the coaches demand of them is very different and really hard. It's such a demanding sport. I mean, physically, we're recording this post our game against Carlton, where Hunter Clark and Dan Butler have headbutted each other, and it just looks horrific. I feel for their mums. I really do, having to watch that stuff, So physically it's brutal. But if you ask, I would say every single one of our players, what do they find harder about playing footy? Is it the physical or the mental? They'll all say the mental. Because it's there's certainly the demands out there on game day. But then what happens post the game? Did we win or did we lose? How did I play? What's getting said about me on social media? What's my family think? What do my friends think? For most of our guys, all people want to talk to them about is footy. What's going on with the Saints? Or, why are you getting a game? Or all of these things. And so you cannot escape it. So we've got to put in work. You can only train. There's a few things you can train. Your body's one of them, and we're doing that all the time in the gym and running around. There's our craft, so our game plan, our skills, and then there's our minds, which is really around what we give our attention to at any particular time, how we deal with pressure.
Do you think AFL are the leaders in this area? More in Australia. Oh no, actually, man. Let's go world. I would think that individual athletes have worked closely with psychologists, but as a team sport, you rarely hear much of it.
Yeah,
and up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, even maybe give or take 5 years.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think my inkling probably is I think we're right up there. Yeah. I think we put in, certainly compared to US sports, I think we'll be at least on a level playing field with them. European sports, no, they're quite advanced, I reckon. I think certainly the Saints, we put a big emphasis on our psychological preparation, performance, mental health. It's hard to say what other clubs are doing and how much they're investing, but it's one of the things we talk about with our players all the time. It's a game of decisions. It's just decision making. Jack Steele's got the ball in his hand. If he touches it 30 times in the weekend, he's probably got the ball in his hand for 1 minute total. The game goes for 120 minutes. So what's Jack doing the rest of the other 119 minutes? He's just making decisions about where to run, what to do, how to communicate. that's all clearly that is driven by his decision making. So, and his mindset and being able to unhook from distractions and get back on task. So many distractions for our guys and for everyone, but certainly on field, so much of our performance is what we're giving our attention to. Jarry, the name of our podcast here, The Long Game.
Yes.
Right? And it was great that you came up with that name too. I think you've nailed it. Yeah. Because the work we do here and the work that maybe our listeners would like to do or are interested in, it's not about just...
Oh, so it's not about kicks, marks, handballs?
Well, no, it's not. They're all outcomes.
Right.
We want to stay in process.
Right.
But it's also a practice. So, the players don't, catch up with me and I tell them some magic words and then off they go, everything's okay. Well, that's not the way this works. I use the gym analogy all the time. The players know that to get, big, strong body, big guns, they need to go and do bicep curls regularly, not once. You don't do your bicep curls and sort of do 10 reps and then look down at the end of it and say, well, what's going on in my arms? This lifting weight stuff is bullshit, all right? Like, I'm not doing this again. But yet so many people take that approach to, say, a meditation practice where they do a meditation once and go, I don't feel any different. What's all this about?
Yeah.
And then concede. It's too hard, or I don't get anything out of it. We try to emphasise with our players that this is a long game, all right? So you want to perform better in any domain. For our guys, it's out here, but for anyone listening, it's whatever you do, whether it's you're a parent or you're a gardener or you're a musician or you're an artist. It's about consistency of practice. And the meditation side of things is designed as a skill of attention control. So my attention's on this thing now, which is not helping me. So let's bring my attention to something that is going to help me. To perform at our best, we need our attention on things that matter, not on distractions. I mean, we've got Wimbledon going on at the moment, and the Australian tennis player Nick Kyrgios, he's performing pretty well.
Yeah, at the moment.
He's pretty bloody distracted.
Yes.
Okay, so he's sort of a bit of an anomaly here, but channeling our attention to the important things in our performance is an absolutely unbelievably important and fundamental skill to try and perform to your best. But that only comes through practice.
Well, like we're doing with this podcast, practicing first before we interview our guests.
Correct.
And we're going to get better and better.
I feel like this has been pretty good practice.
So, I'm looking forward to doing this because you're going to make me look very good in this podcast.
No.
The questions you ask to all our special guests.
We're in this together.
For those who would love to subscribe, please do to The Long Game. You'll see little snippets come out, whether it be part of the St Kilda socials or whatever the AFL do. Sponsors, AIA, they'll probably put it all up on their social feeds.
Yep.
We look forward to just giving you some stories as the year goes on.
Yeah, hearing some stuff from people who have achieved some really interesting things in their life and how they did it. I reckon that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Ben, thank you for joining me on episode 1 and look forward to doing this with you for the next... whatever our contract says.
I guess we'll see, won't we? But it's good to just hang out with a fellow
Gippslander,
red-headed, freckled Gippslander. Yep. I'm excited about that.
What a way to finish.
All right, let's finish there.
See you, mate.
See you, mate. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the latest step of The Long Game, don't forget to subscribe, leave a kind review, and tell all your friends.
And remember, breathe in and breathe out.